take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Is this the real life? Is this just fantasy?
I'm a human being, god damn it! My life has value! It's time to ask yourself what you believe.
Mass murder, torture, perjury, embezzlement, fraud, deception, treason. These are just a few of your many crimes against humanity. You will not win this war, for you are fighting the very essence of humanity.
Hey, welcome to Truth or Talk. I'm Nicole Bowden.
And I'm Virstyne Henry.
You can check out our website at truthertalk.com, where we have archived shows, all the over 100 shows that we've done. Woohoo!
And I know we did it.
We sure did. That was the title of our 100th episode. We did it. We made it to 100. And we also have our essays and some things in our store. Not much at the moment, but we will be building on that later. But we got the awesome, famous Conspiracy Realist T-shirt and Liam's book, Official Stories. So anyway, we'd be honored if you check it out or like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. So, hey, Virstyne, so we'll be speaking to our friend, Patrick Hatwan.
Yeah. He's awesome.
Yeah, he's a really, really, really good person and a wealth of knowledge, so this should be an interesting conversation. And we talked to him a little bit off-air yesterday just to kind of get a rundown of some of the things that we can talk about today. So I have no doubt that we will have a complete hour-plus full interview with him, and it will be really, really informative for a lot of people. So,
you know, that's funny. We used to, I remember when we first started, we used to do pre-interviews.
Yeah.
And then we're like, because I remember we were talking about doing the show, and we're like, oh, my God, like, how should we do this? And then you're like, I don't know, I think that I can do we can do like a pre-interview, you know, and we're like, yeah, you know, that sounds good. Like just us and our amateurish, you know, thinking that we have to pre-interview everybody before we start, and now we don't really do that anymore. But it's funny looking back, you know, like how nervous we were when we started. We were just like, oh, we should do this, and you know how we've evolved and changed.
It's true, yeah. You know, but some people do that though, because when I had been interviewed, I think I got that from just the fact that I had been interviewed on a couple of shows before I had a radio show, and I had been pre-interviewed a couple of times. So
yeah, oh yeah, that's a really good idea.
Yeah, so I thought that was just how it was done all the time. But I realize now they probably pre-interviewed me because I didn't have my own show yet, so they didn't know what I'd sound like on air, you know. It's just looking at my work as a writer, I hadn't done any, you know, I hadn't had any exposure yet. So once you've been out there, people have heard you a few times, or they've been on your show and they hear what you sound like, they go, oh, okay, I know that this person can handle an hour or two of radio, whatever. And they don't pre-interview you anymore. But that was yeah, so that was what we did at first. But with Patrick, you know, he's a friend. He's somebody we've been friends with on Facebook for a while, and he's just a nice, generous person, very generous with his knowledge and information, and just, you know, a good person. But I think you guys will really like this interview because he's going to talk about vaccines, but he's also got a lot of insight into healing, into how the body functions, much more so than I think most people that are out there. It's a lot of stuff gets missed. Just simple understanding of, you know, how these very intelligent systems work.
Yeah, and through, you know, because he was injured himself and he was sick himself, you know, he understands, and it's really interesting because I mean, I think that what I'm trying to say, it's interesting because, you know, people, you know, we're always talking about how people praise doctors and people in the medical profession, but I think when you're really sick, you know, you'll try anything to get better. You'll try anything. So, you know, somebody that, and now nowadays I'm more willing to listen to somebody who's had some kind of like injury or medical condition, and they overcome it. They were able to overcome it themselves, as opposed to somebody in the medical profession who's just being told what to do and not really experiencing it for themselves. You know.
True. Yeah, no, it's true. Yeah, somebody who's actually healed. Like, how many people that go through the normal, conventional allopathic way get healed? Zero.
None.
None. Zero. They might manage some of their issues for a while. Yeah, negative 1, negative 10, whatever it is, and just not. There aren't any, but you have to go through other means by which you have to do the work yourself too, and that's where it gets really hard, and people don't like that answer, but that's the truth of it. You have to take care of clean up your diet, clean up your water, clean up your environment, do all these things, and try and get as close to.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a lot of work, but it's the only way to heal. Otherwise, you're just going to be suppressing symptoms. And you could be making it worse in the long run. You will be making it worse in the long run. So I think we're going to just go ahead and cut to break right now, and then get Patrick on so he can tell you all this stuff for himself. So please stay with us. We're going to take a quick break, and we will be right back.
All right.
Hello, thanks for having me on your radio. Even though we're not from a famous rock and roll band, if we were, even though we sound a little like we are, we'd definitely wear a Conspiracy Realist t-shirt, because they're gear, aren't they? Oh yeah, they're really gear. I want to write a song about them. Conspiracy Realist t-shirts at truthatease.com. I gotta think of the middle 8. Shop.truthatease.com. What does that mean? It's the internet. What's that? I don't know. It's a net. It's between things. Shop.truthatease.com. What's that? It's where you get Conspiracy Realist t-shirts. Oh, gear.
Hi, welcome back to Truth or Talk. Thanks for listening. Today we're talking to my friend Patrick Hatwan. Patrick grew up in South Dakota along the Missouri River, residing in Pickstown and Peoria until college. He was born in Pickstown in 1950. His youth, he experienced a life and lifestyle that was tumultuous. He lived with undiagnosed autism, experienced 2 kinds of subclinical seizures. He experienced learning disorders, math and numbers were Greek. He was dyslexic, had reading comprehension difficulty, and of course the inability to fit in socially were his experiences throughout his entire school years. And regarding numbers, math, it was impossible for him to do any simple math, but when trigonometry came along, he got straight A's. Patrick obtained his B.S. in Life Science at Dakota Wesleyan University in 1972 without ever opening a textbook. In 2000, a life-changing experience was just around the corner. Arthritis began to impose itself in his life. In 2001, he was introduced to supplementation at his intense resistance. A close friend, told him to try some nutritionals with no risk involved, so he relented. Within 6 weeks, there was a noticeable and profound change. In 2005, another life-changing event was going to unfold. A series of events propelled him into Clayton College of Natural Health, where he pursued 2 advanced degrees, PhD, with a thesis on alternative cancer prevention strategies and techniques, and a doctorate in traditional naturopathy. Clayton was eventually forced to close its doors, and the work on the PhD had to be terminated. In 2014, Patrick pursued the work of Dr. Mark Circus from Brazil. He mentored under Dr. Mark from 2004 and still does. But natural allopathic medicine certification was completed in November of 2014. Patrick maintains his business, Wellness Institute of Nebraska, in a very low-key environment. It is illegal to hang a shingle in Nebraska. The state does not recognize naturopathy as legitimate medical practice. Shame on them. Nonetheless, Patrick has exited the matrix and has chosen to not educate himself inside the orthodoxy to this day. His website is mylifevantage.com/Patrick J. Hatwan. That's Hatwan. Please welcome to the show, Patrick. Hi, Patrick.
Well,
hey, Patrick.
What a grateful way to enter. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning and good afternoon to you, and it's so lovely to have you on today.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here. been looking forward to this.
Yeah, we have too.
Yeah, of course. So after that very interesting bio, I'm just curious about the events that, led you to your autism diagnosis and your learning disability. So could you please tell us something or the story behind that?
Well, I don't have a diagnosis. Okay, this is basically through self-training and self-education and reflection on my history. 2 of my seizures, I began to experience these, and I only know that they're subclinical based on my exposure to Dr. Molden, okay? And he and I had great discussion and a great learning experience, but my subclinical seizures were one of 2 kinds. One was I would have this shaking sensation in my head, and the other one was if I was seated in a chair, the room would grow and I would shrink. And I wouldn't check out. You wouldn't know that I've checked out, but I was checked out. In my own body, I was not participating with you. I couldn't, because it was in that moment where this experience with my head that seemed to be shaking from left to right, and it had the same frequency. It just was the same every time. And then the room growth and shrinkage of myself and the room growth was another experience where you would know I was in the room. I could maybe talk to you, but I wasn't going to interact with you very well because I was in another place. I also look at the diagnosis of dyslexia. Numbers were horrible. Math was just absolutely impossible for me to do. And if I had story problems, I had no way to comprehend what was being written out so that I could see the problem. So solutions were impossible. And I would transpose numbers. If I was reading a sentence on a printed page, I would insert words that didn't exist or leave them out and put them in a different place in a sentence. Words like through, though, thorough, and whatnot were there, and there were all different. I couldn't put them into proper context in sentence structure. And then I had social phobias. One was very, very difficult. Figures of authority were absolutely impossible for me to encounter. So that was my self-diagnosis from the seizures, and I believe they began somewhere around the time when I was receiving smallpox vaccinations. I had to take the smallpox vaccination 4 times. The 4th time it took. The previous 3 times it didn't take. You get that little skin scratch, and the doctor looks to see 2 weeks later if the vaccination took. That was what we did then. Well, I had to do that 4 times. Sometime after those vaccines, that's when I began to experience those subclinical seizures. Now, in my day, back in the 50s, parents didn't know about autism. They knew about mental retardation and kids that were misfits. And if I would have dared said anything at all about, I got this seizure, well, and I didn't know what a seizure was. I just would not have been able to explain it. My parents would not have been able to handle it. They just didn't know. And I don't think medicine knew either.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I had a question. So you said that you had to take the smallpox vaccine 4 times because it didn't take. So how did they measure whether it quote unquote took or not? Just were they able to do blood tests back then and just see if you had antibodies or what?
Nope. Back then all they did was to look to see what the skin prick test did, and if it scarred over, I think it was considered that the vaccine took. Okay, so you had to form a little scab on the skin, and if the scab would form, then the opinion of the medical examiner was that the smallpox vaccine took. If it didn't scab up and scar out, it didn't take.
It's kind of like the TB test, how they do that still.
Yeah.
It's interesting they don't do that at all anymore, except for TB, which they don't have a vaccine for, I don't think.
Correct.
Yeah, so it's kind of odd that they just kind of stopped doing that. But horrible for you that they kept doing it over and over again.
Well, I don't think I was the only one. I can recall other kids saying the vaccine didn't take. My wife is one where the vaccine didn't take. Lynn is she's sitting here listening right now, and her hand went up. She says mine didn't take either. I just know that there were several kids. I don't know how many, but there were several.
Yeah. That's crazy. I when I was a kid, they wanted to revaccinate me too, because they lost my records at the school many times. We moved once and they lost it, and then we went to another. But I was so terrified of needles that I begged my mom. I said, "Please, no, please, please, please." So she just went back to the old doctors and had them reconstruct the records. But yeah, I was lucky that I did that, because that would have been horrible for me, I imagine. Horrible for my health.
And
go ahead.
I think sometime in the 1970s I was in the National Guards in South Dakota, and we had to do something for smallpox. It was a little skin test. They just inserted a little circle that had several pinpricks on it, and I don't recall whatever happened about that, but it was to see if we were still immune.
And were you?
They never called me back in.
Okay, so they must have, or assumed you were. So, how was it? I mean, what can you tell us about what was that like growing up with an undiagnosed illness? I mean, how were you aware that maybe you weren't right like everybody else, or you weren't quite quote normal according to how everybody else saw it?
Yeah. I was not normal. I did not fit in. It was difficult for me to form friendships. I recall a few small friendships as a child, but I also recall having some violence in my childhood. I also recall one this was a crazy experience. I might have been about 7 or 8 years old, and I remember this was in the dead of winter, and we had coal bins on our houses, and I saw a cat, and I tried to catch it, and I grabbed it by the tail, and it was so cold that cat must have had a frozen tail, but the tail pulled off. I held the tail in my hand.
Oh, and
yeah, it was just the tail was frozen. I know what it was, but my dad got absolutely, totally upset with me that I would be mean to a cat like that. I don't understand all that. I recall that I was mean to animals as a child. I was mean to girls. I was mean to other boys that seemed to want to pick on us, but I never was able to carry anything out socially. I just couldn't connect with people. So it was difficult for me. I was very skinny. I recall my mom told me one time I was 2 or 3 years old and I wasn't eating, and they were afraid that I was going to die because I just didn't eat. They took me to the doctor, and he gave me a pill, and from that time on, my mom said they never, ever had the refrigerator door closed. I was always in the refrigerator, but I was skinny, very, very, very skinny, and I was skinny until into my probably mid-40s, very skinny. I was 6'5" and 165 pounds.
Wow.
So my metabolism was all jacked up and screwed up. I didn't care what I ate. I couldn't put on weight. And then athletics, it was very interesting. Had I not been in a small school, I would have never been able to participate in athletics. When I was in Pierre, South Dakota, there was no way I would have made an athletic team. In November of '63, we moved from Pierre to Pickstown, and there were like 45 or 50 kids in high school. Every boy in high school had to go out for sports, or you didn't have a team, especially football. And so I was forced to go out, and I was a white Llewellyn Cinder to those people. I was 6'5" and the tallest thing they'd ever seen in Pickstown, and had a coach, and he worked with me, and I excelled. And had it not been for him, I would have never excelled in athletics. In fact, I went on to a wonderful college career and competed nationally in the NAIA Nationals for 2 years in a row, against people like Bruce Jenner and Dwight Stones. And Tom Bell was our javelin thrower, but never would I have been at world-class competition had it not been for him. So, I think it takes a certain eye from certain people to see What people like myself in my category of damage, it takes a certain eye from people to see it. And Coach McCaskill, I hold him in high regard. Had it not been for him, I would never have made it in athletics. I just didn't have the coordination, but he worked with me.
He saw your potential. And then do you think that helped you physically too? Because then I just see with a lot of kids with vaccine damage, there's a lot of pain in the body, and sometimes you think that relaxing is going to help, but they're actually relieved by more vigorous exercise and trying to build those muscles.
Yeah, I think in some cases there's truth to that. The mitochondrial damage is huge, and I didn't understand any of that back then. I just understood that, if I spend a lot of time, I threw the discus in high school, and I didn't do very well, but I would take that discus all summer long, and I threw it every day. It was like I had OCD discus throwing competition in my head. And when I would get something, I would fixate on it, and I would stay with it. During the Christmas vacation, the gym would be open, and we'd go in there to play basketball. And the other kids would come in to play. I went into work. I had this very obsessive, compulsive mentality that you're here to do things, to accomplish something, to work. And if you're not here to work, you need to leave. Yeah. So, yes, he saw that, and he worked with it, and Coach was very good that way. But I think there's tremendous need for the physical side of repair processes as well.
Yeah. Yeah, because this is what you're describing, as you guys know, I have a son with autism. It's very familiar. Like I can hear your story, and I can see it in the way that he approaches things as well, with sort of an obsessiveness, and then how he's very relieved by physical activities, very relieved, and he's relieved when he gets it too. And there's also that area of aggression, which aggression, in traditional Chinese medicine has some connect to the liver, and or some liver damage that might be there. It also could be due to the inability to communicate. So I don't know, you don't exactly remember, you say, but that might have been part of what that aggression was about, just wanting to get it out physically because you can't speak it.
Well, I had a little trouble with that in college, too. I know I played basketball at Dakota Wesleyan, and I recall one time that we were going to scrimmage Augustana, and Coach Fossness indicated that he needed me to make sure that I kept my aggression in control. Well, I didn't. I actually slugged the guy on the floor. He got me, but I got him back. It's kind of like you're out there and the kid pulls your trunks down and you turn around and hit him and you get a technical foul and get thrown out of the game. Well, that's how I functioned. I was always in reaction. I was never proactive. And I'm not speaking in absolutes, but in generalities. I was not capable of proaction. I was very reactive. And social interaction, team sports, I had to do it all. I had to be the center of attention. I had to be the focus. And if I didn't get it, I wasn't happy. I was unsatisfied.
Well, this is pretty remarkable how then you went from this to where you are now. And so when going back to what we were describing in your bio, you were saying you had these life-changing moments. So, and I know from you and I talking off air, you grew up in a family of doctors. And so that must have been pretty surprising to you when you found the natural kind of naturopathy and all that. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, my family is loaded with medical professionals and industrial agricultural people. So they are completely outside of where I am today. This transition started for me somewhere around the 2000s. In 96, I went to Bosnia. I took a voluntary redeployment, and that's when the Internet was coming in. I think Netscape was the big browser at that time. Everybody loved Netscape, and I was on the computer every day in my office doing my job. I came back home December of 96, and I wanted a PC at home, so I bought a PC. Well, through 97 and 98, I began to feel this pain in my wrists. As I slide my fingers up to the keyboard, there was tremendous pain in my wrist. I was self-employed, and if I was an employee, I would have laid on carpal tunnel syndrome. Being self-employed, I couldn't do that. I moved to Lincoln, Nebraska in 2000, and in 2001, a friend of mine who's an electrical contractor up in Mitchell, South Dakota, called and said, Pat, I know you've got a lot of pain with arthritis. I wonder if you'd be interested in taking a look at this product. And I said, well, what is it? And I was still pretty locked in the matrix, okay, my family being in medicine and agriculture. I could not believe that there was anything other than what the doctors had for solutions to arthritis pain. He says, Pat, it's food. I said, geez, Mark, come on. You got to be kidding me. I got pre-med out of the way, and you're trying to tell me that you're smarter than me about how to get rid of pain, and you've got some food product. I don't think so, Mark. He prevailed. He says, listen, there's no skin off anybody here. Why don't you just try it? And if you don't like it, you can stop. And I said, okay, Mark, well, I'm going to do this just to prove you wrong. So I quit the Aleve, and within 3 weeks, that first 3 weeks, I was in terrible pain. But by the end of 3 weeks, going into week 4, week 5, week 6, pain started going away. Within 6 months, I started getting range of motion back. That was the first turning point for me. I have to share with you, though, that in 2002 or 2003, I don't recall the year, but a Dr. Nisi Moore came up from Texas to talk about transdermal application of skincare products that would affect hormone function in the body. Well, I sat through the entire presentation. There were probably 300 people there. And I was pretty naive and pretty bold and pretty ignorant all at once. And she got all done, and I stood up and I said, you guys are a bunch of quacks. Everybody knows that the skin protects the body from toxins. If you expect me to believe that you can rub this cream on my skin and make my hormone function improve, you got holes in your head and rocks in your sacks. Now, that was an embarrassing moment, okay? Very embarrassing moment after the fact, because I began to do some study. I stood up in a crowd full of many people and made a fool of myself, and that propelled me into study. That was another turning point, and somewhere shortly thereafter, I believe in 2004, I discovered Mark Serkis's book, Terror of Pediatric Medicine. That was a tidal wave turning point for me. That book absolutely angered me, because I'm going to tie it together moving several years ahead now. When I met Dr. Molden, he said, Pat, you need to study the work of Dr. Harris Coulter. And one of the books that I want you to study is Vaccination, Social Violence and Criminality, the Medical Assault on the American Brain. And after I read Terror of Pediatric Medicine, the anger was unbelievable when I saw what vaccines were doing to our children and what they do to us, because I saw myself. I saw myself in a post-encephalitic brain, minimal brain damage, okay, because I do believe that I was minimally damaged. I don't believe that I had maximal damage. I was very functioning. Although low functioning early on, there was a change, and part of your question here to answer part of that, I think, V, you asked, is what happened, what were the changes, what were those change points? I don't know where I went from. I'm not completely rid of dyslexia. I don't have any social phobias. My reading comprehension is absolutely 100% reversed. I no longer have seizures. And I'm ASPE. Instead of low functioning, I'm high functioning. I don't know where that reversed. I don't know what I did, although I do know that the accumulation of everything that I'm doing has moved me forward. I think it has a lot to do with nutrition, has a lot to do with detoxification, okay? Yep. Tremendous detoxification processes. And those are some of the turning points. Another turning point was when I met Donna Voti. She had written a couple papers. One was double-blind studies that are from hell, and the other one was something about kids and nutrition to die for. And of course her son was in hospital dying of sepsis, and she prevailed on them with monosaccharides. Well, that's what Mark from Mitchell did in 2000 with me. He said, this is the nutrition that you need to reverse your arthritis pain. That I called him kind of like a fool. Everybody knows that if nutrition would work, why aren't doctors doing this? Okay, we need to know that this is truthful, that if there was any truth to it, the doctors would already know about it and they'd be doing it for us. We wouldn't have to be running around the corner hiding, looking for something that nobody else is doing. So those are all the turning points for me. And when I went to Clayton, it was because of Donna, and she said, you need to get your butt in school and become a naturopath. And those were the turning points. Yeah, that's exactly what I did.
Yeah.
And then there's been several turning points since then, and they've been major. One of the major ones was meeting Dr. Molden. I had written some stuff and saw his stuff online, and we connected on Facebook, and I was talking about non-specific immune reaction. Bam, that opened the door for he to call me, and we talked. In fact, we talked quite often. I eventually brought him to Lincoln to present on vaccine damages. I learned a lot from that man, but I've also learned a lot from Dr. Circus as well.
Yeah, I saw Dr. Molden speak one time as well. Someone had told me about him early on when I was first dealing with this back in 2007, 2008, and right after Aiden was diagnosed with autism. And I saw him speak, and it was a trip. I remember at the time, because I didn't really know a lot yet. I knew the vaccines were a problem. I had seen it happen, so I was aware of it, but I didn't really understand what was going on. So when you got, Dr. Molden is unfortunately no longer with us. He passed away, when was it, about 2 years ago?
Yeah, November of 2013.
Yeah, and so he's no longer with us, but what was his overall thesis about what vaccines are doing? Can you give us a summary of that?
Well, he had several ideas, but primary focus that he had was microvascular circulation and stroking. Okay. Let me do a couple things, because what he taught, you had to hear by way of analogy. One is, and this is in medicine, where the medical community probably won't look at something, and if they don't look at it, they can't see it. Here's his picture that he painted. April, I think a bear killed my dog. Well, no, Pat, we don't have any bears around here. There's no way a bear could have killed your dog. Well, come out here. I want to show you something. So April and Pat trek out to the back of the yard. Pat points to the dog. The dog's half gone. Bear hair, bear tracks, bear crap. April, I think a bear killed my dog. April does a look, eye level high, does a 360, doesn't look down at the ground, doesn't look up, just looks straight out. No, Pat, there's no bears around here. I don't think a bear killed my dog. Well, look at the evidence. It's right. Your lying eyes deceive you. Okay? So that's one thing he taught. And then the other one he taught is the heart's not a pump. Well, Doc, we got blood pressure, systolic and diastolic. No. You have 60,000 miles of end vascular territory in your... Well, what's that, Doc? Well, that's where one red blood cell touches every cell in the body all the time. Way out at the end. He says you know it by tip of the ears, tip of the fingers, tips of the toes, tips of the nose, and frostbite. But every cell in your body has end vascular territory. And your heart cannot pump blood through 60,000 miles of tubes that are 4 microns in size with a 7-micron red blood cell going through it. It's impossible to pump blood through that much territory. How does the blood move through the body? Well, it does it by electrical charge. So his concept was when we vaccinate the body, that's immediate stress. And what happens at that point of stress, it's a nonspecific reaction, the body constricts blood flow to send blood to the point of damage. If the blood flow remains, let's say it happens in the brain, in microvascular or end vascular territory, there's 3 watershed areas in the brain. So let's say it happens at one of those locations and the blood is gone for 3 minutes. You're hypoxic, meaning low oxygen. to the point where if it goes longer than that, you become anoxic, meaning no oxygen. So the tissue starves of nutrients and oxygen deprivation. So when you see stroking, the only way the right corner of the mouth can turn down is if there's a stroke. Lazy eyes. You see one eye that's partly, that lid is down and the other eye is wide open. That's a stroke. You see eyes that are crossed or one popped out or one turning the other way. Or the yolk of the eye. When you do the yolk test, you put two fingers up and both eyes are supposed to follow. Well, one will follow all the way and the other one won't. That's a stroke. The only way that can happen is if the muscles have been deprived and the nerves have been deprived of oxygen and damaged. Facial
I have a question. Oh.
Yeah, facial symmetry would indicate this. The 12 cranial nerves. Okay, Sid's death, for example. Okay, if the eyes are turned in, that baby, if both eyes are turned in, that baby is at high risk for sudden infant death. So that was his primary focus, and he looked for ways to treat and reverse those damages, and he was on to some stuff. One of the things that he said, and I'll never forget this, this was the last Thursday in June of '09. We're sitting on my deck. It was hotter than Hades out. It was at night, I think at 10 o'clock. And he said, Pat, we're all closed containers. We need to find an herbal formulation that will open the excretory system. Because he also looked at excretion processes for ridding toxins of the body. And he was close. He had some stuff. He had a little formula, but he never really got to develop it.
You mentioned lazy eye. I had a lazy eye. I had surgery to correct it.
Is that your left eye?
Like, it's my right eye.
Okay.
It's my right eye.
Okay.
I was just curious. I mean, I don't know. That's just, I have asthma, I have allergies. I mean, when you said that, I was like, I just, did you have have you come across any other, research about any other internal organs being like in balance? Because I have I also have like a cystic uterus, and I'm just curious, if that could be the cause of maybe vaccine damage from what you've researched.
Well, Dr. Molden would speak very specifically that, for example, if the beta cells in the pancreas are damaged, this can be across all organ tissue. It doesn't just have to be the 12 cranial nerves, but that was his measuring device. Okay, he said vaccine damage can be across all organ tissue, immediate or delayed,
okay.
Waxing and waning, meaning it can come and go. It doesn't have to happen right away. One of the things that I really liked is a picture. He says, if I hit you in the arm with a baseball bat and it doesn't break it, you're lucky. But if I just sort of tap you on that arm 100 times, eventually that bone will break. If I tap you with vaccines a few times, you may not break right away. You might break immediately. But he says we might vaccinate you 20 or 30 times, and the 31st time is when you break. Okay, and it can happen in any organ tissue in the body. So we're not talking just in the brain. We're talking anywhere. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because let's look at this thing called, let's look at the microvascular circulation. Let's say we're talking about kidney and the blood flow in the kidney, okay? And you get impaired flow for 7 or 8 or 9 minutes in the kidney. You will have kidney tissue damage. Let's look at something else. Let's throw an antibiotic into the mix. Now we got kidney cancer potential. Where will pathogens set up in the body? They'll set up where there's no blood flow, where there's no host immune defense. Okay? One of the pictures that I use to describe cancer is nature's way of cleaning up dead material. It should be a good warning sign for us. Cancer shouldn't be a negative diagnosis. It should be, listen, folks, we've got business to tend to here. When a tree falls in the forest, we look at it. It's generally because it's rotted. It's rotted because something wasn't properly metabolically, biochemically happening in that tree. Maybe there was an infestation of bugs. Well, there was something that brought the bugs there. I'm going to step back and go into a little bit of a different arena here. I'm going to go into the argument between Pasteur and Béchamp. And Béchamp would say it's the terrain. Pasteur would say it's the bug. I will tell you that the bug doesn't cause disease any more than flies cause garbage or mosquitoes cause swamps. Okay, the swamps have mosquitoes present. The garbage have mosquitoes present. What happened first wasn't the bug. It was the terrain. So if we keep the body healthy and don't allow damaged tissue, for example, bad blood flow and antibiotics set up cancer. So we get proper blood flow. We keep a proper pH in the body. Okay, pH is everything. Okay, we keep the blood flow. Dr. Molden also talked about zeta potential. Okay, so if the blood is flowing through the body properly in microvascular circulation and the blood is clean, we're going to be healthy. So that's some of what his teaching was all about.
That's really fascinating.
Yeah, that is.
It makes a lot of sense. The analogy you used about the garbage, it's like a perfect analogy. If the garbage isn't there, then the bugs have nowhere to feed. They won't.
Yeah.
So
Dr. Suzanne Humphreys writes in her book Dissolving Illusions, and I'm just fascinated with that book. She writes in there that, and this is history too, that plumbers and street sanitation workers did more for health than all of modern medicine combined.
Oh, yeah, you let your doctor, they'd have a seizure. It's crazy.
Yeah.
They couldn't take that, but they don't want to believe it's that simple.
Well, there was a time, if we back up 100 years from today, the doctors would hear that a lot easier and more readily than they will today. The doctors are really indoctrinated today. They're not taught nutrition. They're not taught, and they're mechanistic in their teaching. Doc Molden was brilliant. He was multidisciplinary, and he one of the things he said is the endocrinologist won't look at, for example, the pediatrician's work, or the neurologist's work, or the maybe the liver people or the kidney people. They all go off in their separate ways, and they're competing for turf. Well, he brought all those disciplines together and connect dots.
It's everything's compartmentalized.
Yeah, and I think to our detriment.
That's part of the. Yeah, that's part of the indoctrination process, I feel. And this is why Suzanne Humphreys is so dynamic and so, her work makes a lot of sense, because even though she's a nephrologist, she's gone to different areas of science to, grab pieces of the puzzle to put them together to make it, to get the grand scope of what's really going on in the human body.
Yeah.
In regards to vaccination, so.
Yeah, she's wonderful.
And it's interesting because Virstyne and I talk about how this is kind of like all this scientific research, a lot of it comes back to common sense, and then in the end we go, wow, it's common sense to know that your brain would be connected to your gut, to be connected to your, the other tissues in your body, that there's a circulation, that all these things are happening by a very intelligent design. And then when you interfere with it, it's basically like, digging up, the road in the middle of the highway's flowing just fine, and then as soon as you start, digging into it, it's going to cause people to crash, it's going to cause backups, and that has a domino effect to everything else. So it's kind of just common sense, and if you look at, ancient teachings of traditional Chinese medicine, almost everybody understood that there was a synergy, body, mind, and spirit, and everything was connected. And now we have to reinvent the wheel and figure that all out again, because we've been taught that everything needs to be in little compartments, and really, really study the gut and really, really study the brain, but not recognize the two together.
Right. Yeah. Well, there's a lot of neat stuff, and the science is really big today, but I think you're onto something, April, when you talk about how we're all interconnected. inside. All the systems are connected. There was, back when I was looking at these monosaccharides, one of the things that I looked at was you are what your grandmother ate. And you are your grandmother's history. And medicine has kind of picked up on this, and they want to point to family history. And then they want to tie it into the genetic realm so that at a certain level there's a psychology involved that says, well, you're not smart enough to understand genetics, and so you need to rely on us to find a solution for your problem. And when you do that, you rely on toxicology. Well, I go back, and I'll go back way to maybe 500 years, 600 years ago, and we hear a phrase called all that mankind needs is created for by God and nature. It's the job of science to find it. Now, I have a caveat to that. It is not the job of science to find it, alter it, patent it, and then sell it back to us as a toxin, which will have a negative cascade on our health. What we need to do, and go back to what Dr. Molden said, is find a formulation that will open the body's functions. When we do that, and we do it naturally without toxins, I get a real burn in my saddle when I hear this, dose makes the poison. Well, no, that's kind of a twist. All poison is poison, no matter if it's 1 molecule or 10 trillion molecules or 1 billion molecules. Poison is poison, whether it's one atom or not. The consequence is we've been conditioned to believe that if it doesn't kill you, it's okay. Okay? Well, let's look at vaccines haven't killed everybody. Okay? Medications don't kill everybody, but they do damage every time. My business card on the back of it says if you've been medicated, you're damaged. If you've been vaccinated, you're damaged.
Yeah.
Plain and simple.
Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely.
And then there's no argument.
We were talking on the phone. Yeah, there really is once you really research, I'm just curious, or not curious, but yesterday we were talking off air. You told us a joke that I kind of think summarizes, what's going on with people today. So can you share that joke with the audience?
Well, I can. You just need to let me find it. I've got it in my OneNotes here somewhere. Yeah, there we go.
Okay.
This is a blonde joke, so if you've got brunette hair or red hair or black hair or brown hair, don't be offended. I'm gonna sally up to the blondes right now. And this is basically about our perception more than anything else, how we think we hear based on who we are, what's being said. Last year I replaced all the windows in my house with those, expensive double pane, energy efficient kind. Well, today I got a call from Home Depot who installed them. Well, he complained that the work had been completed a whole year ago and I still hadn't paid for them. Well, hello? Just because I'm blonde, it doesn't mean that I'm automatically stupid, does it? So I told him what that fast-talking sales guy told me last year. He said, put these windows in a year, they'll pay for themselves. Well, hello? It's been a year, buddy. They should be paid for. Well, there was dead silence on the other end of the line, and finally he hung up. He never called back, and I'll bet he really felt like an idiot. Okay, well, that was me talking to Dr. Nisi Moore about you can't put stuff on the skin and expect it to work in the body. Okay, hello, I might be a gray hair, but that doesn't automatically mean I'm stupid and senile.
Yeah.
Okay. Our problem here is we're put in pigeonholes, and we're only allowed if you're a doctor. You're the only one that's allowed to talk and think and act and behave. Or if you're a contractor, you're the only. Or if you're a lawyer, and the rest of you will help you find out what you're supposed to think, the way you're supposed to think it, and we misinterpret what we've been told. The poor blonde joke here, I mean, sure, they'll pay for themselves, but that doesn't mean that you don't have to pay for it out of your pocket, and that savings will return the money to you. And see, we miss the link. We miss the full picture. We miss the total connection. You are what you eat is a misnomer. Most people would say, well, you are what you eat, so we should be fruits and nuts, right? Well, I take that a step farther. You are not what you eat, and it's impossible for that to be true today. But here's what you are. You are what you chew, digest, assimilate, and eliminate. So if you bite your meat 2 times and swallow it, you're chewing chunks in your digestion. You haven't mixed salivary enzymes to hit the gut. Now the gut's going to have to overwork and will not be able to break that meat down, or whatever. Let's just say you took a bite of an apple and chewed it twice, and you got 2 chunks in your stomach now. Now you've got to get it down into the intestines where the pH changes, and you've got to assimilate and absorb those nutrients. And if that isn't happening because you got gut dysbiosis, i.e. antibiotics, fluoride, chloride, medications, pharmaceuticals, herbicides, you're not going to absorb nutrition. And then if you're not eliminating, either through the bowels of the urine or sweat or earwax, sebum, sputum, breathing, if you're not eliminating toxins, you can eat healthy all you want. You can pound all the nutrients and supplements in your body you want, but you're not going to get healthy. Okay, so this blonde joke really fits into the picture of we aren't hearing completely, but we didn't assimilate completely in the construct of everything that's going on because we don't understand it all. And so part of my job is to help people to see and hear some of these things. And, you know, I have to tell you, exceedingly blessed to have met some very powerful people in medicine. I just bless Suzanne Humphreys and her work, and Dr. Bradstreet, and, you know, there's a lot of people out there that are doing good work, Dr. Molden and Circus.
Yeah. And Dr. Molden, it's such a great loss, you know. At least not some of his work behind, but I mean, that's somebody I would have loved to interview him, meet him, and yeah.
Oh, he was
to meet him.
When he spoke very, very, very fast. And when he thought twice as fast as he spoke. The guy was, we had him in our house for a full week, and let me tell you, the man is, I've never met anybody like him, ever. We were just absolutely graced with his presence, and he called eating a nasty requirement. He would just stuff, he would look like a little pocket gopher. He'd just stuff it up and run off and go do his work, back to work. And it was lightning speed. The guy was brilliant.
Wow.
Yeah.
Ahead of his time and then gone too fast.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, so another thing I wanted to ask you about, Pat, that we talked about yesterday was and you mentioned Dr. Jeff Bradstreet. So a lot is going around about the GCMFA. I wrote an article about it too, and you had some opinions about it as well. So what can you convey to our audience what you were describing to us about your concerns with this protocol and how it may not benefit everybody in the long run?
Well, there's a couple things that I try to look at, and one is, are we really looking at something that is, as it's being described to us, is that what is really happening? An example. Glutathione is produced in the body, and there's pharmaceutical glutathione interventions that are IV. Glutathione is a very powerful chemical. It's a detoxifier, it's a chelator, but when it's made in the body, it's much more effective than if it's IV'd. For example, an IV glut will cost several $1,000s. It takes about 30 minutes, or will last about 30 minutes, and there's a little pain and a lot of time involved with it. So it doesn't function in the body like your own glutathione would. Another example would be SAMe. This was a prescription that was, I don't know if it was prescription, but I do know you could buy it over the counter from a health food store, but it was used for mental function. But when the body was making its own, it was functioning correctly. If the body didn't make it and you supplemented the supplement, the body would undo. Well, the same is true, I think, with the proteins. We got tens of thousands of proteins in the body, GC being one of those proteins, and then the macrophage activating factor, GCMAF, is to make macrophage function in the body the way it's supposed to. I'm not of the opinion yet that when it's isolated and then injected, that it functions as well as or as good as what the body would make on its own. The same would be true for another protein, one that I look at and I function a lot or focus a lot on is the NRF2. The body makes it and it instructs genetic expression. It induces genetic expression for the body to make some enzymes. So my concern is that we've seen some papers, and there's one company that makes GCMAF, and it's a reputable company according to everything that we read, but I'm not certain that theirs is the only science that we need to look at. We see, for example, there might be some side effects. Everything that we read is glowing. Maybe 75% of the people that have experienced that therapy have recognized benefit. And I think what they're looking at is to disable nagalase, which is produced by cancer or tumors in the body that allow for metastatic cancers to develop elsewhere in the body. I think, this is just my thinking, that high doses of vitamin C are much more effective than injecting GCMAF. Rather than trying to inhibit the nagalase, why don't we inhibit what produces the nagalase, which would be the virus? And the virus can be inhibited by high doses of liposomal vitamin C or IV vitamin C, proper levels of iodine in the body, proper levels of magnesium. If we have sulfation is proper, methylation is proper. I think the GCMAF functions on methylation or along with methylation processes. It would be my opinion that we look more to the cause, that we see the GCMAF as a symptom approach rather than a causative approach.
Yeah, and you brought up vitamin C, and then this is an area I think there's a lot of confusion about, because over the years, we've been told to take vitamin C, and then we've been told to go off of vitamin C because it's the wrong kind, or there's ascorbic acid. I think Linus Pauling said it was the best form because it just helps you eliminate, but then it's acidic, so then when we're talking about the pH, a lot of people have problems supporting it. So how do we get, because we can't produce vitamin C on our own, that's one thing that we're not able to do. So how do we get it enough to where we are able to suppress the viruses or help us eliminate?
I love this. Yeah, I love this, and this kind of comes back to the blonde joke again. Okay, hello. Dr. Sean Talbot wrote a book called Deadly Antioxidants, and we know that vitamin C is an antioxidant, but that isn't the only function of vitamin C in the body. And Dr. Suzanne Humphreys talks about ascorbate, and she's very high on using vitamin C therapies, especially to treat whooping cough. And I can't say that, but she can. She's a medical professional. Legally, she can say it. But we know that vitamin C prevents scurvy, for example. But as we go into therapeutic dosages, a pill form of vitamin C, most people take 1,000 or 2,000 milligrams, and they're going to find themselves on the bathroom stool because it relaxes their bowels. And then Dr. Linus Pauling taught us that we could increase our bowel tolerance by dose adjusting and getting the body acclimated to the vitamin C and then going up and stair-step that dosage up. And some people can get up to 12 to 15,000 milligrams of vitamin C a day by pill form. Well, that's not really enough when we're talking about dealing with cancers and heavy viral infections, bacterial infections, for example. Vitamin C is very powerful. And when you do it in liposomal form, you could get up to 50, 60, 70,000 milligrams a day. You could go to 100,000 milligrams a day and not have bowel tolerance problems. What we know about vitamin C is that it also it will kill viruses. It'll kill those that are in cancer, and cancer emits enzymes or compounds that will destroy collagen. Well, vitamin C builds collagen. but it also kills viruses. So we see it as a cancer therapy. We see it as a pathogenic therapy. And in proper dosages, large dosages, we can prevent and treat a lot of conditions. At home here, what Lynn and I do when we feel a sniffle or an itchy throat or maybe a cough or we just feel out of balance, we'll take 7,000 to 14,000 milligrams of vitamin C 2 or 3 days, and we're done. It's fixed. We're pretty good to go. So the approach, you can make your own liposomal vitamin C. I was just at a convention here in Kansas City 2 weeks ago. We were talking about some stuff at Life Vantage and the technology behind it. And one of the people that I use as when people want to know how to make liposomal vitamin C is there's a Hawaiian chiropractor on YouTube. And doggone if I didn't meet him up at Kansas City, and we had a nice little visit. And he'll teach you how to make liposomal vitamin C at home. So you don't need to go to the doctor. Wonderful. Yeah, you don't need to go to the drugstore to buy pills because you can't get enough that way. When we're talking therapeutic dosages, we're talking in the tens of thousands of milligrams. Now, I do want to say something here, too, that I'm not a clinician. I'm not a licensed medical practitioner in the allopathic field, so none of this can be taken to be or construed to be medical advice. So don't ever rule out visiting your medical people.
Right, for sure. Yeah, no, but it's, go ahead, Virstyne.
Oh, no, go on, you go.
Oh, I was just going to say, because it's interesting that you describe it that way. Because, I mean, I'm wondering if are we doing ourselves any good by just taking, like, the daily dose of vitamin C, or just getting it through our food and then using it to sort of wipe out bugs when those things arise?
I think you hit the nail on the head. It shouldn't be something that we do all the time. You know, there's certain foods we're told to eat in season. Okay?
Right.
I think we take that with a grain of salt. There's a lot of truth to that. You know, if you have citrus fruits in season. Another thing, and this is very big, and it points to the fallacy of diets. Okay, there's all kinds of diets out there. Two things. Number one, Lynn is on a diet right now. She just cut all grains and all sugar. She's lost 15 pounds in less than 3 weeks.
Wow.
Okay? All right.
Yeah.
So grains and sugars are toxic. Okay, and here's one thing that I try to teach people about how we eat. And then I'm going to go into the genetic key side, then Dr. Steve Nugent.
Perfect.
And I use a bit of absurdity, but there's a lot of science packed in this statement. Gizzards grind grains. Cows don't got gizzards. Neither do people. Okay? That sounds really bizarre. But if you think about this for a minute, why do we feed grain to livestock? To fatten them up. If grains will fatten livestock, what will they do to people?
Make them skinny. I'm just kidding.
Okay, so I want people to think about grains are unhealthy. And now we get some people that go scriptural and say, well, it says in the Bible, okay, those were unleavened grains and they were not hybridized or genetically modified. They were pure grains. So, for example, if you want to eat grain and you want to make bread, get einkorn, E-I-N-K-O-R-N. You can buy it on Amazon. Make your own bread at home. And use slow yeast from the air, so you make sourdough bread. Okay, that breaks down the anti-nutrients in the wheat. So now your grain is healthy and whole. Now, back to the genetic key. And I don't believe in the eat for your blood type, okay, because you're going to hear why when I tell you the problem with that.
Oh, yeah, really? Yeah, I'm interested in that, please.
Yeah, blood type diets aren't necessarily scientifically validatable. Here's why. I cannot feed the Inuit Eskimo apples and oranges and expect them to survive. Now, let's stop with that thought for a minute. You both have heard about the standard American diet, right? SAD, how pathetic the American diet is, because it's processed foods, okay?
Yeah, for sure.
Well, we go into genetic key, and We also hear about the paleo diet. Okay, well, the paleo diet's a junk phrase or a junk trap as well, in my opinion. Which paleo are you talking about? South American paleo, Mediterranean paleo, Siberian paleo, Inuit paleo, North American Native American paleo, Bermuda paleo. See, Dr. Steve Nugent is a naturopath in Texas, wrote a book called How to Survive a Toxic Planet. He also wrote about the genetic key diet, that you have to eat for your genetic background. So, for example, the Inuit Eskimo can't eat the standard American diet. It will kill them. They have only always lived and subsisted and survived on animal fats and proteins. To bring plant-based carbohydrates into their diet is toxic. Their genetic wiring isn't written so that they can process those foods. So we have to be very careful what we hear. It's back to that blonde joke again. Hello? Okay, we've been exposed to some, and Dr. Marvin is a good friend of mine, sitting regent at Oxford School of Medicine. He makes this statement: if doctors tell you they know anything about nutrition, they probably can also tell you a little bit about the quality of soil on Pluto.
That's awesome.
Right.
All right. Yeah. Nutrition's not taught in medical school. If it is, there's maybe 8 to 10 hours, and basically they make fun of nutritional sciences.
Yeah, I've heard that. Yeah.
The pharmaceutical industry writes the textbooks for medical education. Nutritional people don't. And see, this leads me into something else. When I went back to school, after I got my degree in an accredited school, I determined after I met Dr. Donavoti and I met some other people that I would never, ever educate myself inside the bubble, inside the matrix again. Everything that I do is outside the matrix. We can't find the solution inside the problem. So I step out and I look in. Okay, so Dr. Nugent's work is right about the genetic key. And when we see the blood type or the paleo diets, the Mediterranean diet, the Jenny Craig, the this bank, they're all junk as far as I'm concerned. That's my opinion. They don't really have much scientific credibility.
Right.
So when we look at our autistic children, we have a lot of thinking and a lot of science that's out there, but we need to sort through. And I really feel sorry for we in the autistic community because we really get maligned. We get maligned by, the DAN doctors, Defeat Autism Now, for example. They had a protocol. It didn't really work, and a lot of people jumped on it. Okay, then we've got this program and that program and these supplements and those supplements, and we get little bumps, but we don't get complete improvement. Homeopathy, naturopathy, allopathic, acupuncture, the energy people, the yoga people, they've all got something going on, but we don't get the complete repair and healing, and that's because we're not assessing the damage and repairing at the base.
Right. Yeah, that's a really good point about all of that because I've experienced that firsthand, and over the years I've come to realize what you just said, because it's like little bits here and there. These things might help a little. These things might help a little, but it's it becomes to be too much because it's very expensive. You have to put your money, your time, your effort, and it's hard on the kids. You know, they have to take all. They have to. I mean, they're taking 30, 40 different vitamins, and I mean, just think about. You know, I do anything that Aiden's prescribed. I try it myself because I just am like, I used to, because I couldn't afford to just buy vitamins for everybody. I used to just give it to him, and then I thought, no, I have to see what this feels like. Because if I don't like it, then he's probably not going to like it, and he's more sensitive than I am. So I'm going to see what this feels like, and if it hurts if it gives me a stomach ache or this or that, or if it doesn't help, then I'll be able to know if it makes me feel good. And most of it doesn't. Most of it doesn't make a difference. Doesn't even do a dent.
Yeah. In homeopathy, there's something called Herring's Laws of Cure. Okay, from the inside out, the top down, the bottom up, last in, first out, okay?
Yes.
And then there's also something about, when we start healing, there's two kinds of crises. There's a healing crisis and a disease crisis, and they look the same. Okay, so Lynn and I experienced this back in 2001, I think. We tried some supplements, and we got sick. And we said, you know what? And that's one of these blonde moments. Hello, but we got sick. We were detoxing, and we didn't realize what was going on. And we said, you know what? This stuff is junk. It made us sick, and I don't want to have anything to do with it.
Right.
Okay. What we do when we start to clean up is we can get sick, and people really need to understand that the detox or the Herxheimer reaction. Okay, we're going to feel sick. It's going to look like flu, vomiting, cramps, dizziness, temperature fluctuations. We just don't feel good. But when we go there, instead of staying where we're at, dose down. Don't stop, because you need to push through and get on the other side. And here's the thermometer that we can use. On the disease crisis, your vitality is going away. On the healing crisis, your vitality will return. Now, along with that, in many cases, and this is the question to both of you, can you tell today that your exposure to the sun is inducing 5,000 gene expressions?
No.
Can I tell, like when I'm out in the sun? No.
Yeah, you can't sense that your gene expressions are properly modulated because of good exposure to the sun.
No.
You also can't tell whether vitamin D binding mechanisms are not functioning, can you?
No.
Okay. How can we tell if a supplement is or isn't working? Most of the time, and here's what we get, I couldn't tell that it was working. You see, we pop the food in a microwave and we expect it to happen in 5 seconds that it's ready to be cured. And we've got, that's those blonde moments again. Hello?
Yeah.
Okay? So, our duty, and this is my duty, this is my call, this is something that I've taken on as my passion, is to help people see. And one of the things I like to do is do autopsy supplements. Okay? Supplement autopsies. I like to look at the supplement, read the ingredients, and then determine. I had one supplement company here in the United States. One of their products had titanium dioxide in it. And I called them out. I called the chief science officer and I said, you're holding yourself, and I was involved with them. I said, we're holding ourselves out to be this great and powerful company. And yes, we are. But you have titanium dioxide. Do you know what titanium dioxide is? Yeah, it's a whitener. But do you know what else it does? It's also carcinogenic. I will tell you to get it out of the product, or I will let everybody know up and down the line on my side of the fence what you're doing. Well, it's gone in 2 years. So I like people to know that we can see their supplements and tell them what's in them, whether they're good or not, whether there's ingredients in there good or not, and whether they should or shouldn't use them. Now, I can't diagnose the condition, but I can tell you whether the supplement is effective or not.
Right. Yeah, and in homeopathy, like you said, you're talking about, when you're taking something and you feel sick, they think any shift is good. So it's like either you're going to have a good experience or even a negative experience, but as long as you're shifting, then that means something is stirring and something is happening. So you could be detoxing or you could be healing. But yeah, it's true. So, and speaking of that, so I mentioned during your bio that your website, my Vantage, and so you have a supplement that you work with.
Yes.
Can you describe that and tell us about it?
Yes, I do more than that, but that's a multi-level marketed company. That's called Life Vantage, and they make a product that stimulates. They make several products, but Pro Tandem, they make a skincare line. There's an energy drink, and then there's something for our pets called Canine Health. It stimulates a protein in the body. Okay, this is back to, I don't think we can isolate and inject these proteins, but I think we can instruct the body or help the body produce its own proteins. And what this protein is called NRF2, nuclear erythroid factor 2. It stimulates about 400 genes, survivor genes, which modulate genetic expression to proper levels so that the body produces its own glutathione, its own superoxide dismutase, and its own catalase. Glutathione is jacked by about 400%, superoxide dismutase by about 28%, and catalase by 58%. So we're looking at anti-fibrotic, anti-inflammatory, and antioxidant activities that the body can do on its own. That is a product called Protandim and True Science. Now, I work with other products. I work strictly with minerals, okay, magnesium chloride, detoxified iodine, baking soda, maybe some selenomethionine, vitamin C, okay, and that is pretty much the limit with what we work with. We just basically get people back into the sunlight, get their bare feet on the ground, teach people how to breathe. One of the things that I look at is people that are sick or shallow breathers. So we get them to learn how to breathe deeply. Okay, they don't need to go to hyperbaric treatments. They can do some of this maybe at home. You know, breathing is a cancer treatment.
Wow. That's incredible, and that's like thousands of years old knowledge too, because they use that in yoga practice and you know, the Sanskrit and also meditation. You know, and you're right about the shallow. Go ahead, Virstyne.
Yeah, I was just saying I got. It's so funny that you said breathing because I'm really exploring that with my asthma too. That's why I just ordered a book on pranayama breathing to focus on deep breathing because I'm realizing I'm not breathing deeply too. And it has an effect on my lungs and just maybe other things in my body. So that's fascinating.
Yeah, and when Aiden gets really upset, sometimes he breathes in a lot, and he keeps breathing in, and it's hard for me to instruct him to let it out as well, but he'll just keep breathing in and in and in and in, like he's trying to suck it in and hold it in. I'm going, let it out, you know. So it's true. The breath is so vital. Even myself, when I do some of that breathing, I can feel my anxiety. I feel stress and everything sort of release.
Sure.
Just from like 30 seconds of deep breathing.
Now, what you can do with Aiden is when we're in the middle, and I like to use this as an example. For example, a terminal cancer. People that are terminal with cancer don't hear us. They're in survivor mode.
Yeah.
So when Aiden's in his distress, he's in survivor mode. He can hear your words, but he can't process them.
Yeah.
But he will process them when he's in a good state. And so our teaching moments and our consoling moments are when we're in good states. See, we work with the biopsychosocial spiritual aspect of health. See, we're spiritual beings, and so we want people to have a good spiritual connection. Now, you'll notice that I didn't say religious connection. Spirit, the spirit of love.
Yeah.
Okay. A good social connection. So a good social connection is people that aren't energy suckers, but they are present and powerful in their presence in good ways, healthy ways.
Yeah.
And then the biological is everything that we are as physical beings, and then the psychological. This one's big because the psychology ties to the spirit, which ties to the physical and social aspects. But Dr. Virapin is a close friend of mine. Dr. V is the former CEO of Eli Lilly, Sweden. And he says that he's the guy that bribed the Swedish government, by the way, to get Prozac approved in '91. He says all the SSRIs are a hoax.
Yeah.
They're all a hoax.
Yeah, we know that,
okay? Okay, so serotonin is produced in the gut by bacteria and transferred via the vagus nerve to the brain. So we don't look at mental psychology and psychiatry as much as we do the gut being the first immune system.
Right.
Yeah. So it's multifaceted.
Yeah, no, it's a huge subject. And, I mean, we could go on and on, but we're just out of time here, Patrick. But this has been really good conversation.
Yeah.
It's really, really informative. I like the way that you use analogy and you put things into perspective so that we can grasp it. I feel like I understand when you sometimes we have people on and, they talk a lot of science mumbo jumbo, and we're grasping to understand and try and take notes and things like that. But the way you describe things is very clear. So it's been really good, and I hope our audience appreciates it as much as we do.
Well, I want your audience to appreciate you guys. You're both really awesome, and I value what you guys are doing. It's really nice to see young people, moms and dads, and maybe pre-mom and dad. One of the things that I would like people to do, and this is for you, V, I don't know if you have children yet?
No, I would like some, though.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would like for you to be a clean lady before you decide to have children. And whoever you...
Oh, I'm working on it, yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Because
I am. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
If you're clean and toxin-free, as much as you can in today's world, you will produce a healthy, viable, strong baby. And that baby needs to have the same thing. Now, our young girls today are big on candy, and so they see a lot of adrenal problems and reproduction problems.
Right.
Sugar is bad.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Yeah, I'm actually, and I'm not going to do a hospital birth, thanks to April and our mutual friend Junie. I've really been inspired, when if I get pregnant, not to do a hospital birth, to do a natural birth. And,
yeah, it's true. Just eliminating the doctor and going with a midwife is immensely empowering and healing in and of itself. Having done it both ways, I can tell you for sure.
Yeah. Now, April, I sent you the book by Dr. Suzanne, right?
You did, yeah.
Okay.
We both got it.
Okay. Yeah, you both sent us one. And I'm reading it right now, yeah.
Well, here's another one. What I would like you to do is, and this one's for you, V, because one of my colleagues at Clayton College was having trouble with conception. They had several stillbirths and couldn't carry to term and couldn't conceive, and she wanted to do IVF. And I said, well, that's dangerous. I don't want you to be octomom. So let's clean you up, let's detoxify you, let's nutritionally support you. Well, they now have a 7-year-old boy now. I call myself the Immaculate Grandpa. Well, she wrote a book. She wrote a book called Loveolution. She was diagnosed with a cancer and very deliberately did some things in consultations and finally got clean, and she's healthy. I would like you guys to read that book. So I want you to send me your mailing addresses again, and I will send you the book by Holly Peckskamp called Loveolution.
All right, awesome. I'm on that right now.
Great. I know we're bookaholics, so we'll never.
Oh my God! I just spent a bunch of money on Amazon. I'm just
have addiction to books. It's for sure.
Okay. Yeah. Well, you guys go friend Holly Peckskamp.
Okay.
On Facebook.
Okay.
And
I will do that.
You tell her I told you to.
Okay. That's great.
And that's awesome.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Patrick. And before we let you go, please tell the audience again what your website is and where they can find you.
Well, this was the website that I have that is available is for the Life Vantage products, okay? It is My Life Vantage. Not Advantage, but Vantage. LIFEVANTAGE. MyLifeVantage.com/Patrick, middle initial J, HATWAN.
Perfect. Okay, well, thank you so much. I'm so glad we were able to have you on today. It was really, 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 really informative and a lot of fun. Always a pleasure to talk to you. I consider you a friend. So thank you. And everybody stay with us. We'll be back after a short break and close out the show. But it's been a pleasure, Patrick. I hope we can have you on again sometime.
Pleasure. Thank you, guys, and blessings.
Blessings to you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Blessings to you. Bye-bye.
Everything I'm looking at seems crazy. The newspaper, the television, nothing's right. Nothing's telling me what's true. It's like I fell into a bucket of cream and kicked my legs until I became a mouse. What's that about? I'm a conspiracy realist, not a conspiracy theorist. I want a t-shirt that represents me. What? There's one that's available? Go to shop.truthertease.com, says the voice in my head. Shop.truthertease.com. It's not crazy. I'm not afraid to go on the internet and go to shop.truthertease.com. I'm not scared. I've taken out bowling balls that look like you. That's what I said. Straighten out. Get your conspiracy realist t-shirt. Don't make me come over there. You look good. You look good.
Hey, welcome back. Thanks for listening to Truther Talk and hanging with us today. So we just talked to Patrick, our friend Patrick, and that was really great. Didn't you think, Virstyne?
Yeah, we're just so blessed. We were talking about how we keep pinching ourselves, that we're just so blessed to meet all these people that are wealth of knowledge with the work that we do. So, and as always, it's never enough time, you know?
Yeah. Indeed, I know. We had so much we could have asked him, continued to touch on, because he was getting into all this really great stuff that could just continue to be his own show. You know, when he brought up Bouchamp and versus Pasteur, I knew you were like, oh my God, yes.
Yeah, because I'm saying that right now. So, I want to like preach, you know, as if I were in a Baptist church.
Right. Preach it. But that could be its own show right there. Just that one topic, you know. And, and vitamin C could be its own show. I mean, it's like all that stuff we touched on could be its own show. But he got through a lot. And
Suzanne Humphries has a really good lecture on vitamin C. If anybody's interested, you just type in Suzanne Humphries vitamin C, and
I've seen that out there. I haven't watched it in its entirety, but
what?
I haven't gotten through it yet.
That's why. But it's very informative.
It's about 2 hours long. Is that it? How long is it?
I think it's about 2 hours. I don't remember.
Yeah. Right. It's hard to get through all that stuff, but some of the stuff is pretty complicated. You know, it takes a while to touch on all that, and
you have to internalize it and just kind of, you know. Yeah, you have to internalize it and rewire your brain because you've been told, you know, we're all relearning stuff. So, you know, it's going back to school.
It is. It's going back to school. It's much more intense, and I feel more motivated and interested in this time around.
Yeah, totally, definitely. I do too. It's not as daunting, and it's not as like just boring. For, you know, I think I was trying to find a better word, but I would just say boring would be the word, because, you know, when I, you know, going to school, I only wanted to, I wasn't interested in any of this stuff. And now, I mean, I have a passion for history, I have a passion for science that I've never had before. Well, I'm sorry, I've always liked science, but I mean, like with history and even math, I mean, just all these things I want to learn, because I see how it's all connected and how, you know, knowledge of all this stuff has been suppressed and it's been kept from us. It's been kind of dumbed down and, you know, hidden from us. So now,
and maybe that's part of why we're so bored in school and stuff, is because on some level maybe we realize we're being led a bunch of bullshit. So we're like, you know, I don't really want to listen to this. But then once you start, it starts to make sense to you, and you start to, you start going, and you start unraveling the truths. Then I can't get enough of it. Then I'm like, I've got to know more. I've got to teach more. I learn more. You know, and it's really, really fascinating stuff.
I was just looking at secret geometry books. I think I ordered one, and how much of a crackhead I am. Like, I think I ordered one. I'm not sure. I just go into, like, days, and I just go on Amazon, and I see dollar books, and I'm like, I have to have it, you know. But it's funny that I, you know, I sorry, I lost my train of thought. I'm just talking about learning and, the sacred geometry books. And I remember when I was in school and I hated math, and I remember learning geometry. I'm like, why am I drawing triangles and circles? What is it for? This is stupid. I'm not going to use triangles and circles in my life. Yeah. Like just the way the information is presented, not really aware of how it applies. And then you learn about sacred geometry. You're like, oh, there are triangles and circles and everywhere, and rectangles, and there's patterns, and it's very like you don't really see the importance of it, And I was talking to somebody yesterday who was a history teacher. He was really cool because he was into he was talking about reform too. Like he wanted education reform. He's not teacher anymore. He does real estate, but he was just very frustrated because he felt that he was limited in what he was able to teach as a history teacher, and he felt that the way history was being presented in school just made it very boring and uninteresting, and it wasn't the passion that he had for it, and as a teacher now, especially with the Common Core, like evil that's among us, among the education system right now. You're not, A, you have to teach a lot of material in a very limited time, and B, you're not allowed to really bring in any of your materials, to make it more interesting. You have to teach a specific way, Yeah. And I remember consciously when I was doing a long-term subbing first grade job years ago, before I even was awake, but so to speak. But I remember there was this curriculum called Open Core, and it was a reading curriculum, and I was trying to teach the kids like some alphabets and words and stuff like that. And some of the kids weren't really getting it, and I thought that I could figure out a way that would make it interesting and easier, and bring in objects and other books, to add. And I brought those in, and they had somebody and basically sit in on the class and watch me teach, and they were like horrified. And I was like, but the kids are getting it, and it's much more fun for them this way. And they're like, oh, well, no, you're not supposed to teach it that way. You're supposed to teach it the way it is in the book. And I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? And there was this joke that a lot of the teachers, they call the Open Core Nazis. Like we always call them that, because you're literally being like taught how to teach, not only what to teach, but how to teach. So that's even more insulting, because as a teacher, you should still have some creativity, in what you're teaching, and your own personal insight and way to make things relatable to children that you see fit, Otherwise, you're just a robot, and it's very like, miserable, basically.
Right. Why don't they just give the kid the textbook and then walk away? I mean, what's the point of having a teacher?
Just
They're
put
just
on video. Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
Just
put the teacher.
Yeah.
Or like you said, a robot. Use AI. Use a cyborg and just have them teach because what's the difference?
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if Bill Gates has that in mind. He has that, coming. But I got fired. I got fired from that job just for doing that. So, I mean,
it just goes to show how much messed up.
How what?
How messed up that is, And have one of the things I've heard a lot about the Common Core is that it's almost worse for teachers than it is for the students.
Oh, it is. It is. A lot of teachers. I don't know if I told you or talked about this on air. I think I may have told you this off of the air, but last place I taught English at an after-school Chinese prep school, and I supervised a homework hour for the kids, and so they would come in with questions for homework, and that's how I got to see a lot of the Common Core stuff that was coming in. So I had this one kid, adorable, one of my favorites, and he was like 7, and he wanted to just know how to add 2 numbers, and it was this whole complicated process. I was like, I really don't know how to teach you the Common Core way. And it was weird because of the school where he was going didn't even let him take the books home. So it's like, how can the parents even read back, to help their kid, because they don't know this way, because they weren't taught this way, So he comes up to me, and I was just like, I don't know how to teach you. He's like, that's okay. My teachers don't know how to know it either. It's like, what? So come to find out, the teachers have to. Some of the teachers, they have special classes that the teachers go to learn how to teach this stuff. And I'm just like, this is ridiculous. Why is math harder? You know, it's already hard. Or it's already, and maybe it's not as hard. I think it's made harder than it should be, but now this Common Core has just taken it like over the top. It's ridiculous, beyond preposterous, you know. So I mean,
It's true.
I'm glad that, you know, I don't have a child in school at the moment, because I think I would probably be homeschooling. I would have to. I mean, now I plan to homeschool anyway, but I would probably be doing that. For sure.
Your kids are going to be so set up, you know. You're going to have like the perfect little vessel for them. You know, your body's going to be all clean, like Patrick was talking about, getting you all set up for that, and then, you know, homeschool and everything. They're just going to be set up.
Oh my God, they're going to be like superheroes, man. I can't wait.
It's amazing. I know. It's just, I mean, just a little thing of not going to the hospital and doing it outside the hospital. I mean, there are cases where I've heard people who have wanted to do a home birth or wanted to do it outside the hospital and end up having to go there for emergency cases. But I think for the most part that it's really, 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 really safe to not do that. And you would only want to go if it was a life-threatening thing. It was something that you just, you know, but, and that alone, you know, is going to set your kid up to be a lot more healthy, mentally and emotionally and physically.
Yeah,
so that's,
for sure. Huh?
Go ahead, sorry. No, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, no. Yeah. So, yeah, I'm really excited about that. I can wait a few more years, though, because I look at you and my other friends, and man, being a parent seems very hard.
It ain't no joke, but it's a lot easier when you do it the right way. You know, having a child who, when I didn't do it the right way because he was vaccine injured, and we did go through the hospital, and we went through that torture, medieval, dark ages hospital, you know, where they made sure to torture and traumatize us, and then having him vaccinated, which is the same thing, just dark ages trauma, making sure to traumatize everybody, and then, you know, that is awful. But then doing it, you know, the right way, I mean, you can hear little Alice in the background. She's fine. She's got no problems at all. And gasp, she was not born in a hospital, so whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever to that. But
yeah, but you know, like in countries that aren't westernized, people just, you know, countries that aren't western, people just, what am I trying to say? They just go to the river and they just have a baby and they're over it. You know, it's not like you see all of these movies where women are in the hospital, they're like holding on to the bed and like, kill me now, get it out of me, oh my God, you know.
Right.
And, you know, like third world women go to the, they just go to the, you know, river and they're just poop, bite, done. You know.
Right, yeah, because a lot of that pain is fear, you know. You have fear of the pain. So it's like they teach you in the movies to be afraid, and because you see how painful. And it isn't to say that it doesn't hurt, because it does. And I don't think there's any way for it to not hurt at all. But I think a lot of the pain comes from fear. And I speak that from experience, because even the last time with Alice, I mean, it was better because it wasn't in a hospital and stuff, but I mean, most of the pain I experienced was my fear of the pain. I was so like, oh my God, this is going to hurt. And I was overwhelmed by the fear. And so letting go of that, knowing like, okay, this is going to hurt. There's no way around that. And the pain you're feeling now is not going to get any worse if you're stressing out about it. It's not going to be relieved by your stress. And it's not going to get any worse due to your stress. So it could get worse due to your stress, rather. And so you have to kind of let that go in your head, you know, that's it, because I think that a lot of the pain comes from that, just you're psyching yourself out. Because my whole pregnancy was great. It was just towards the end when I was delivering her that I was like stressing the pain. Because I had experienced the last one with Aiden was so traumatic and frightening that it scared me away from wanting to have another for a long, long time.
Wow.
And, but then it was a different experience, and I wouldn't, I wouldn't do it any other way. If it ever happens again, I would definitely make sure to stay away from the hospital. But, and, my vessel and my body is healthier now, all these years later than it was when I was younger. So, because I just wasn't taking care of it as well. I wasn't hip to all of that. So, it's really interesting. Patrick's story is fascinating because he came from such a. It's really, really fascinating, and I think he could probably even get into more stuff if we had more time to talk about it. But it's like he should write his biography, his autobiography.
Yeah, that would be great. I wonder if he's doing that. Has he written any books?
No, I don't think so. He should, though, because he has a lot of information. He should write some books on healing, and also, but definitely about his own life story, because that alone is really, really fascinating. Somebody who went from a low-functioning autistic kid, undiagnosed, it was the 1950s, and they just thought they just wrote him off as retarded, and then, and he's really open about that, and even though something that it would have been a very painful experience.
Yeah.
But he just talks about it, and, it was, later years found out it was connected to his smallpox vaccine, which is not at all surprising because we've heard other accounts of people having a similar type of reaction to smallpox. Remember that guy who was the reporter?
Oh, yeah, that was yellow fever, though. It was yellow fever vaccine.
Oh, that was yellow fever.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, but he had, like, what do they call those psychotic episodes? And he thought he was the devil, and he just went, like, he lost it for a few months, or whatever, all because of the vaccine. And it's funny, because April and I saw the interview, and he's like, I'm not anti-vaccine, I just think that, they need to do more work on the yellow fever vaccine. And April and I are like, we're going to watch this unfold, because I think by the time, he's an investigative reporter, so he's probably going to do a lot of digging, and by the time he does, he's going to be anti-vaccine. I think.
Yeah, no doubt, right?
Wouldn't be.
Because all he's got to do is do the history. Yeah. He's just coming out of this thing. He's been, because he went nuts, but then he had also, after coming out of that, just hallucinations and total psychosis, he was physically ill for a long, long time, which I think he still is. So he's just kind of coming out of it, and at this point, and his book is called, like, what's his name? Max is a little unwell, something like that. His name.
Oh, I didn't even know he had a book.
Yeah, he's got a book about it. About Malcolm. Malcolm is a little unwell, or is unwell, and that's the experience. And I think what he recognized was the lack of ability to file suit for his damage and get any kind of retribution for his damage, or even acknowledgement for his damage. That's where he's starting at. So he'll get there. Once he digs past the history and is like, why are they hiding this? Where, I can't get any money for my damage. What are they hiding this for? What else are they hiding? It'll just that thing will just
wait, these chemicals and the vaccines are harmful? What? Like, doctors don't like good. Like, just be like, oh my God.
Yeah, because all you got to do is just look a little bit further, and once you go, it's just never ending. But yeah, he's Patrick was his story is really, really fascinating, and I think that would be a really, really interesting book if he were to tell it in full detail. But he gave us a lot of he gave me personally a lot of insight, because I was like, gosh, that really resonates. I can hear what you're describing, that vaccine injury as what I saw happen with Aiden, and the part about the anger and the aggression and all that. I could see that in Aiden as well, and and then he said he couldn't exactly remember why, because it's just that survival, flight, or fight mode. So then you just go into fight mode because you don't know what to say, you don't know how to respond. So it just comes out.
Leave me alone, everybody. Back off, back off. I'm like,
or you have something to say and you can't say it, so you just lash out physically. Yeah. Because you're nonverbal, or you're, in which case he was verbal, Patrick, but he had dyslexia. He had difficulty articulating what he was trying to say.
Yeah, that would be frustrating for anybody. The people that can talk and they already, they just don't know the words to communicate their feelings. It's just very, I can just imagine how that would be incredibly just, I don't know, being trapped in your own body.
Right, and especially when you're sick, like he was saying, the cancer patients, they'll go into it too. And even though they might not have that kind of neurological damage, but they'll go into that where they can't speak and they can't talk because they're in survival mode. And so it's you can't reach somebody when they're in that state. And if they're in that state a lot because they're always in survival mode because they don't have the ability to communicate, and their bodies are always unwell, then that would be really, really difficult. So it's complicated, all these things that are going on, but at the same time, like we said, it comes back to common sense. So it's not it is complicated, but it's not that complicated because it's just about keeping your terrain intact and doing all. If you can do that from the get-go, then you're great. If you can't, then you're going to have to deal with all the things that come along with building up garbage. Yeah. So,
yeah.
He did a really good job explaining that.
Yeah. I wanted to tell him, and we just got off track, but I wanted to say that was really big of him to admit that he was wrong when he was saying that he stood up and said that you called them a bunch of quacks and stuff. It takes a big person to admit that they did something like that and then come back and be like, you know what? I was wrong,
It's true, yeah. And imagine he says he's 6'5", so the 6'5" guy stands up.
You guys are quack.
Right, you're going to be totally intimidated,
I kind of wish I was there. Like,
I know, right? That would have been awesome.
The gas from the audience. Like,
I know. I know, it's really. But, I mean, he's big to explain a lot of this stuff. It's painful experiences that he's describing, and then he's talking about, his own follies and mistakes that he's made, and then being a person that comes from a family of people in medicine and agro, I mean, just completely outside
right.
of all that, and then just saying, this is...
hear that. That's crazy.
Huh?
I said, I was just surprised to hear that. That's crazy. And it's this where it's probably overwhelming, and he not only has to fight his personal demons, he has to fight his family's insecurities and ignorance, and in addition to that, it's like full-on warrior mode you have to be in, in order to overcome that.
Yeah, precisely. And then just really confident and knowledgeable in he can, I'm sure, just totally anybody in the allopathic, he knows like 1,000 times more than they do, And
yeah, I have to make the disclaimer. I feel like I'm not a medical doctor. I know how a lot of people who are allopathic doctors do that. Like you have to do that to cover your ass.
You do. You have to. It's unfortunate you have to do
it,
but
it's sad.
Mm-hmm. It is sad. Yeah, because those
by the way, we're not medical doctors either. We're not offering advice. We're just offering our opinion, but you know what I mean?
Yeah, we're not offering medical advice. We're not medical doctors. We just play them on the internet. Yeah.
It's ridiculous though that how people how
we have to go. Yeah, I know. Just to teach people. We have to say, well, this is just common sense, y'all. It's not, but but if you're a indoctrinated quack, then clean water. What say you? That's quackery. That's going to save your.
What your immune system can, your body can. Blasphemy. That's conspiracy talk.
Right. Yeah. I had a troll actually say that something similar to that. She said something to the effect of the immune system, to the response of the immune system could fight a disease like the measles. She said that would be implausible. Would it? So no one's ever fought off the measles before? Like everybody just, has gotten it, has just died on the spot? Like, I mean, it's just, come on now.
Yeah,
that's implausible.
It's funny though because I've been thinking lately people that are because I think that people that they just don't know, they have other things to worry about, they just haven't looked into it and they don't understand it and they kind of have that mentality, that's fine. But somebody that is so vehemently, like opposed to the possibility of that just really kind of illustrates to me that there are a lot of people that have or it illustrates to me that the person has very low opinion of themselves as humans and the human race and human ability, Whether they're indoctrinated to believe that, or they themselves just have a very low opinion of humanity, Because I think, too, there are people, this whole, that are very, what I'm trying to say, they're very, they say things like, they're really quick to talk about how science does this and science does that, and, Mother Nature and human beings and things that have been created naturally are wrong and bad, and they're not good enough, but they also just seem to have a very low opinion of, nature and humanity, from my experience,
Yeah, for sure. And they think it's just silly. Like they think it's all that it's not been proven in science. But what's funny is that the pharmaceutical companies actually use the same models as people as herbalists and botanicals. They isolate it and they what do you call it? They concentrate it to make the dosages of the part that they find to be the beneficial aspect of it, or the thing, and they concentrate that, and then so that you feel an immediate reaction, you feel an immediate response. So they're really following the same. Right.
It's a lie. It's like a what's the word? Not a lie necessarily. It is what I'm thinking about. It's like what's the word? It's like a plagiarism. It's like a biological plagiarism, maybe. How they're just teaching.
That's an interesting way to put it. Yeah.
They're just basically stealing. But I've been thinking a lot too, like how a computer basically is, modeled off brain, cameras, modeled off eyes. A lot of things that we have, technological things, they're ultimately modeled off of nature, airplanes, birds, things like that. So
it's true, yeah, I know. So it's so funny how they have such disdain for nature and for things that are natural, but yet that's what technology is. It's all based off of things that exist in the real world,
Yeah, it is, and it's destroying stuff. But ultimately, it's like it's a very temporary solution to, because even all this technology, and of course, we have the internet. It's helping us to connect and reconnect with a lot of this information and connect to each other, which is great. I'm not saying technology is bad, but at the same time, it's like, the way that we're using our resources and not replenishing them and destroying our ecosystem. It can't last. It's not going to last.
No.
So.
Absolutely.
There have to be ways for us to, come back into our power, have our own independence, and not be so dependent on these things, because, we need to, because we can be manipulated and controlled that way, and also just be kept in a state of, kept in a state of ignorance about how your body works, then you're more, able to be dependent on medication and a lot of other things that, make your life miserable if you're not aware.
No, I know. And then and it might keep some stability for a while, or maintain, you might be able to fake it because they can suppress your symptoms for a while, but it may not always be there. Is the point?
Yeah.
And if you're talking about medicine, and the same thing is with technology. I mean, some of these things might have some ease in your life in the way that the world is right now, but the world might not always be that way. How do we know that? Because history, things are always going to change, and sometimes they go back, and we lose some of this knowledge, as we've seen. Much of the knowledge that we're discovering now is stuff that was already known thousands of years ago.
Yeah.
So how does that happen?
Isn't that funny?
Isn't
that funny? Yeah, it is.
Right.
Yeah.
So how does that happen? And then, and to think about what was the knowledge of the ancient people that didn't even write things down. When I was looking into our family history in the Celtics, I mean, and in Ireland and Scotland and that area, there's this whole vast history of things that went on before they even started writing things down. A lot of the things that are known about them are known through the eyes of other people who came through the Romans and the Greeks and people who came to the island and saw them and witnessed their actions. But they didn't write things down because they passed things on verbally because they didn't trust it to get into the wrong hands. So they wanted to keep it in their tribe. They wanted to keep the folklore, keep the information that they had in their own within their own people. And the same is true here in America. The Native Americans did the same thing. So we don't know what they knew. They could have been just onto everything and just fixing disease. And, they probably didn't even have that much disease. And they're probably living into their hundreds and not even having disease because they were just chilling. They were just doing everything right, and and then the knowledge gets erased.
Well, it's funny. It's funny too because I was talking to. I like learning languages and stuff. So I was talking to somebody that was, what am I going to say? Oh, we were talking about language learning, and I think in my experience, I've come across a lot of Africans who are just geniuses at language learning, and they can be like, oh, I know 10 languages. They really like 10 languages. They can speak and communicate in 10 languages. Now, I think part of that is because a lot of their languages and the way that they acquired information, they don't write things down. They have to use their memory a lot. And when you use your memory a lot, you're using mnemonics, you're using your brain, then you can retain a lot of information. And I think, the internet and all these other things too, the way that we're being taught in school, it's causing us to not use our mental, or to lose a lot of our mental capacity. And a lot of these people that are like, indigenous people and stuff, they have incredible memories, and they have a wide scope of things and nature and just, a lot of other, a lot of things, that we aren't really, used to, because we're not used to functioning. So I'm actually trying to get back to that. I'm trying to make more of an effort to, I'm getting into mnemonics and all these other things and memory tricks and trying to retain stuff, in my head without writing, things down or, just relying on the computer for stuff. And even, I think I would start with that too, is with that, like the whole vaccination thing. I realized that, I would post a bunch of links, sometimes when I was arguing with people, which I still do, but I honestly feel like now that I have better success when I can actually regurgitate the information that I've learned, and not just that I've memorized, but give people a broader view and figure out a way to relate it to them in my own words, as opposed to be like, look at this, do this, and that shuts people up too because they can't really rebut you.
Exactly.
Because you know more than them. They can just be like, oh, well, this is a link, and but when you they'll just be like, oh, that that link is invalid because that's not proper evidence and whatever, dude. But if you can basically throw down with them in your own words in a very intelligent, organized way, and in a way that people can relate it to their their life, then they can't really say shit. So I'm really focusing on that. And
absolutely. Yeah, definitely. I've noticed that as well. And that's pretty much what I rely on now. I hardly use any links at all. And then in some cases I do, but then usually I'll just throw down a big massive, because thanks to Ginger Taylor, she put together I think when she first put it together, it was 87. But now I think there's over 100 links on Scrib. You can find its medical publications connecting vaccines to autism. So you can just pop that up real quick and just say, okay, here you go, and then just give them 100 at once. And they'll be like, oh, yeah.
And then,
but
they'll
all of
be
them
like,
and get that.
That's not valid evidence. These doctors are incredible, or uncredible. They are incredible.
All like over 100 of them? No way.